Hello, everybody, and welcome back to UXChange, the podcast where I exchange my user experiences to change them, and yours for the better. I'm Jeremy, a mentor and senior user researcher with over 8 years of experience and a background in neuroscience. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of engaging with hundreds of users around the world, spanning across Europe, the USA, Africa, and India. This has allowed me to deliver actionable insights that have improved user experiences with nutrition, automotive, delivery, and e-commerce sectors. I've created this podcast with the aim of providing my mentorship and educational content, offering actionable tips, knowledge, and guidance in the realm of research, specifically focusing on UX research to anyone having an interest in this area. And I hope that you will find this episode insightful. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I'm super happy to be back. And before we start for this new episode, I want to address three topics. The first one being that I want to thank, of course, all of the auditors, as always, for your trust, for giving me your time and your attention. It really matters to me, and especially this week, I want to thank the auditors from India and from Norway, as I saw from the back end of this podcast channel that the podcast is ranking well in India and in Norway. So I'm not chasing for the ranking, but this was a nice surprise to me. So if you like the show, I encourage you to share it, to subscribe, to hit the notification bell so that you are notified when a new episode comes in. And this is also the opportunity for me to tackle the second topic, which is the goal from now on. I will strive as much as possible to release one episode per week. So that is the goal from now on. Let's see how this goes. And for today's episode, that's my third topic. I wanted to give you the agenda for today's episode. This episode will be focused on how to make the most of your preparation for interviews, for job interviews. And I want to make this clear that this applies not necessarily to UX research, design, and so on. No, it applies to every kind of interview. So before we move on, I just want to emphasize that I am not a recruiter. I am not a talent acquisition expert. However, throughout the years, I have been led to apply for many companies, especially when I was laid off last year, 2023. And so the tips I'm gonna give to you are coming from my experience as an applicant only, not as a recruiter, but as an applicant, when I saw what worked and what didn't. What are the tips that you could apply for your application process in order for you to increase the chances for you to get a job? And to be honest, if you should listen to one resource, I'm not saying you don't have other good ones on the internet, but I'm just saying that this episode will provide you the necessary information you need to apply respecting the 80-20 rule, meaning by giving in 20% of the effort, you will have 80% of the results, because I did all the hard work for you. I scourged the internet for all the best articles, some of them, for instance, coming from Harvard and so on. I will give you all the resources in the show notes. So I did all this work to score the internet, to gather all the articles, gather all the resources, including videos, including articles, and so on. And so I made some guides for myself when I was laid off in order for me to craft the best application and for me to prepare for interviews. Then I used this guide and I created some templates for myself so that I can reapply them to prepare for interviews. And to be totally transparent with you, now my templates are not digital at all when I prepare. You will see my technique. I'm gonna reveal the technique. Maybe it doesn't work for you, but maybe you learn at least one thing. And if you learn at least one thing, I will be happy. This would make my day, to be honest. Because this is the overall goal of this podcast, I just want to reemphasize again. It's called UXChange because I exchange my experiences so that I improve yours in whatever areas of your life. So it's true that it's more focused on UX, on career progression and so on, but who knows, maybe in the future it will not be only those topics that I will be addressing. It's for you to tell me. If you want me to address new topics, tell me on my website and on the feedback form that you have available on my website. But so coming back to today's topic, which is about applying to interviews, why did I want to make this episode? Well, several reasons. The first one being that when I was preparing for interviews back then, when I was laid off last year, I was overwhelmed by the amount of resources on the internet, and I didn't know where to focus. And this is, to be honest, a challenge nowadays for a lot of people when you want to enter an area, to not know where to focus, basically, because we are overwhelmed by the amount of information. And so I needed desperately a ready-to-use guide for me to prepare my application process so that I could focus on it and not just gathering information and synthesizing. And so as this did not exist, at least I could identify at least 3, 5, 10 different guides and resources, the ones applicable for the overall interview process, the ones specially for UX, the ones even more specially for UX research. So my goal was to make one that is kind of synthetic for myself. And so as I saw that this didn't exist, at least maybe I didn't look correctly, but at least for me it didn't exist. I thought that once this would be created, so it's been 1 year now, but I thought once this would be created and once I could validate that this works, I will share it to the world, or at least I will share it to the people listening to me. And so here I want to make some disclaimers. This will not necessarily land you a job. It's just here as informational purposes, and it's just here for help. The goal is for me to share with you my experience, my tips. It doesn't mean that it's a magical formula, okay? So that's the first thing. So the first reason, as I was saying, is I went through this myself and I lacked the guidance when I was in this situation. And so the second reason is that, of course, this is a never-existing problem. It still exists. I'm still being reached out every day and every week by mentees from all around the world asking me why are they not being called for a first interview. It's as simple as that. So I am seeing that the problem still persists, and so I want to help you. I want to give you my tips. It doesn't mean that they will always be valid because things are always moving. Now with the arrival of AI, maybe the recruitment processes will change a bit. I don't know. I'm just speaking for the current process that exists and that I'm going through on a regular basis. So the process that I want to talk about is the usual one, which is you submit your resume, you submit maybe a cover letter, maybe a portfolio, and then you're being called for an HR interview, like a first screening interview from a talent acquisition specialist, and then you're being called for a technical interview, and then you're being called for eventually a case study or take-home assignment, and so on and so forth, right? But so the goal here for me is to tell you how to land this first interview with HR, and then from the first interview with HR, how to land the first interview with a technical recruiter. And even maybe moving forward, this will apply more or less to all interviews, okay? But so that's the goal, which I identified that for me it worked, and it doesn't need to be complex. If there is one thing I want you to bear in mind from this episode is that it doesn't need to be complex. You don't need to be working like crazy just to land an interview. Then define crazy, but It doesn't need to be. I will tell you all my mistakes that I've been through. It doesn't need to be a full-time job. So I know people say applying for jobs is a full-time job. Well, I've been through this myself, and I can confirm it has been a full-time job. However, I'm telling you, I have not been doing this the right way. That's why it was a full-time job. Now, with the tips that I'm about to give you, I'm applying a 20-80 rule. I'm being contacted, giving in 80% less of the efforts. Okay, so now diving right in. One thing you need to understand first, and that will be my first part. So in this episode, you can expect to learn about why is it so difficult to land an interview. First of all, that's the first part. We will cover this, and then how you can prepare for job applications and interviews. That's the first episode of this two episode series, and then in the second episode, we will see what you should prepare, but like in terms of questions and answers, in details, and what you should prepare even before thinking about the questions and answers. So it will be all of these parts will be covered. But today, I just want to give you first. In the first part, I want to cover why is this so difficult to get an interview, and I want to cover this because I don't want you to feel bad or that you're not qualified overall. Maybe you need to gain some skills, it's possible, but if you think you have the right skills, I just want to give a kind of a disclaimer, and for you not to be too hard on yourself, that first of all, job hunting is in itself challenging, okay? And job hunting is competitive, especially in research right now, because in UX research, maybe also in UX design, I have no idea. I am not in UX design or product design, and maybe in other areas, product management and so on, but I know that tech overall right now is a difficult field to enter, right? Again, I'm not a talent recruiter, but I'm just saying from my perspective and my friends and the people I know applying, it seems that there are more demand than there are offers. So first of all, you need to have this in mind, okay? It will be highly competitive, first of all. And this, whatever your level. I've seen leads, seniors, head-offs being refused, of course, because this is competitive. And with competition, in essence, you need to be the best. Being good is not enough. You need to be the best. And this is not necessarily dependent on you. That's the thing. That's the thing you cannot control. So there are criteria you can control, like the amount of effort you put in, and not necessarily effort, smart effort, let's say, okay? But crafting your application in a way that resonates with the employer, listing your skills, listing what you want, listing what attracts you from the job offer. This is in your power. This is your responsibility. The rest is out of your scope. If your competitor, so another researcher or another designer is better than you, you have no way to know. You have no way to know. So you can be the best, but in the end, it's possible that it doesn't work out. So don't beat yourself up every time. That's the first thing that I want to say. Back then, when I was laid off in 2023, it was a numbers game. I have been refused to certain job positions with stupid answers, to be honest. And I'm not saying this in a negative way. I know this is a process. This is a numbers game, and sometimes you're not being screened for whatever the reason. So I have been applying, for instance, for positions in which there were more than 1,000 applicants. Can you imagine? And so in this case, for instance, I remember having crafted exactly the resume, exactly how I'm going to tell you to do it. Exactly. And then I was refused for not having the skills for this position. I was told, you have not enough blah, blah, blah. Imagine quantitative analysis, when my majors were in that, and I mentioned that in the resume. So I have been refused sometimes for not logical reasons, and this can happen to you even if you're super duper prepared. So don't beat yourself too much, first of all. Then the second point, you can have a good profile, a good resume, a good cover letter. You can be perfect on those points. However, if you don't communicate it correctly in a way that this is understood by your audience, and that is why interviews exist. If not, it would be only resume and cover letter. Because an interview is necessary for us to be able to understand better the candidate. Because if not, you could be crafting your resume and your portfolio and your cover letter by someone else or by AI or whatever. Then it wouldn't reflect really who you are. So you need to be able to defend yourself, to market yourself on the spot. That is kind of a gauge of quality and a gauge of, let's say, of trust. So this is the only way. This is the only way. So if the communication is not at the level of your background, that can be a reason why you're not landing the job. And I know this is hard to hear. I've been through this, and I still sometimes I still struggle. As if tomorrow I want to apply to some positions, if it is highly competitive, even if my profile is super good, I might not be accepted for communication issues. It can happen because communication is one of the most challenging topics, areas for us humans, because it's not. You can predict it to some extent, but it's more unpredictable than is crafting your resume and your portfolio and your cover letter. So that's why it's a skill. It's a skill in itself that has to be trained. So you need to train, you need to repeat, rehearse your answers to your question, to the questions that will be asked to you, rehearse your elevator pitch and so on, like be able to present yourself, to introduce yourself, and so on and so forth, right? And so even rehearsing, again, it's possible that your competitors, in this case other applicants, are better than you, and it's okay. So one way you can know is by asking for feedback, for instance, after you're being rejected. So that's the idea. Don't dismiss the importance of communication. And then the last point, and this is super important, and this is really what makes most of the 20% effort that I will give you and giving 80% of the results, is apply only for positions that will genuinely interest you. And I know it's not easy to hear. I have been through it. I have been laid off. 2023, I remember sending more or less 10 applications per day. Well, maybe not that much, maybe 5 applications per day, but it's still a lot. At the end of the week, you can count. So it's tempting, of course, because you need a job, and I get it. So what I'm about to tell you is sometimes we cannot have the luxury to cherry pick the ones we are only interested in, and I get it. I'm just saying that if you apply to the ones you're interested, it will be easier. It will be easier for you down the road. Because when we are interested in something, everything flows. Everything is easier. If tomorrow I want to make 20 pull-ups, but I'm not interested in fitness, I have no interest in it, my effort will have to be double than someone who is interested in it, because the motivation will make all the difference. So that's my third point here, is that if you apply for positions that genuinely interest you, you will, and for the ones you also think you will be a good fit, it will be way easier for you, of course, because you will see then I will give you all the tips I have to prepare for job interviews, and some of the tips, they highly depend on that topic of being interested. Because if you are interested, you don't need, for instance, to justify. Yeah, you will need to justify, but the justification will come easily to you of why you're interested in the position, for instance. That's one aspect. I will talk about it further, but that's one aspect. So that's my first 3 points about the job search process, how it can be difficult, why it can be difficult, and what can you do about it. and don't beat yourself so hard, first of all. Then, second of all, you need to be prepared for job applications and interviews. And for me, the first step is about scanning. It's about scanning the job offers. Well, actually, to be totally fair, it's not the first step. The first step is to be prepared, is to have your profile, imagine LinkedIn profile up to date. If you're using LinkedIn, to have your resume up to date, to have your portfolio up to date. We will go over it next time in the next episode. But this is one thing. In the next episode, I will focus on what you need to have prepared. So my point is, this is what you, in any case, have prepared to send your application. But then you need to make another kind of preparation based on all of that material to prepare for the interview itself. And this I will cover it in the next episode. So today I want to cover how you can actually make use of the job offer, just a job offer, to ease your application process and your preparation for interviews. And so this happens at the time you apply. At the time you apply, you will do the tips I'm going to tell you to scan the job offer. And then if you're being called because you send a resume, you sent a cover letter, you send a portfolio, if you're being called, then you dig into this job offer again and you apply the tips I'm going to tell you right now. So every job offer in general is how can I say, is laid out the same way. You will always have something like the position or your responsibilities and expected profile or expected skills, minimum qualifications, and so on and so forth. And then you will have benefits. You will have also sometimes a small description about the company. And so for me, these are almost always present in all job offers. And you need to have them really well in mind when you apply, at the time when you apply. And again, if you selected a job offer that really interests you, it will be way easier for you to remember and to see what catches your attention. But basically what I do is I take, as a first step, I take this job offer and I divide it into sections. So the section which is about the company and the role / the position / job responsibilities, this goes into one bucket. And then you have minimum qualifications, skills, expected profile, and so on. This goes into another bucket. And it's important you have this in mind because these two buckets should resonate differently to you, although they are related. In the end, you will have to craft a compelling story and cohesive story. But the way you prepare your interview, you need to think in two dimensions. You need to think in two buckets, basically, because we have two parties inside of a job interview. We have the interviewer and we have the interviewee. Each one has motivations. Each one has needs to be fulfilled. Each one is willing to some extent to trust the other party. And so that's why you need to have this in mind, okay? The bucket that is about the company and job responsibilities is no other than, well, it will serve you for answering all the questions about what interests you for this position. So basically it's that you cut your job offer in two, you put this in one side, and you highlight everything that interests you, that attracted you. So imagine, job responsibilities, leading a team of 3 researchers. Okay, that's what I want to do. Or job responsibilities, you will be an individual contributor, but you will be able to mentor some people. Oh, that's exactly what I want to do. And you need to also pinpoint what you don't want to do from this list. This is important. And if you see more things that you don't want to do than the things you want to do, well, don't apply. Because that's what I always tell my mentees, and that's what I told myself. Imagine you get accepted. What are you going to do? Yes, you will have a job. Great. But if you can afford it, wouldn't it be better to wait for, I don't know, 1 month more, if you can afford it? Of course, I know this is not always easy, and to have a way better offer and something that really interests you. So that's the point. Have it on one side and highlight everything that attracts you. And that's why I told you to only apply to the ones that interest you, because it will be way easier. Imagine you apply to something that is not interesting to you and you need to do this exercise. It's completely nonsense. But again, I know how the numbers are, I know how difficult it is, and sometimes we have to do it, and sometimes you need to craft a story to justify why you would be interested in something, but you are not. So I know that there is the theory and the reality, but I'm just exposing you that if you're interested in something, it will be way easier for you to spot and to say what you're interested in, because it catches your attention. And then the second bucket is about minimum qualifications, minimum qualifications, expected skills, and so on. Here, I want to make one thing clear: you don't need to align with all. You don't need to meet all the criteria. You don't need to. We all know this meme on the internet. I represented several ways, different ways, like the job requirements, the interview, blah, 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 and then the real job. And it's true. In my opinion, all the jobs I have been in, it's true. Like, they were asking way more things in the resume, well, in the job offer, in the interviews, than in reality. In reality, in general, the job is easier than what it seems, at least. That's what it seems. So that's the point. You don't need to meet all the criteria. Apply even if you don't. Because, well, to some extent, of course. If you want to apply for an engineer in acoustics position and you are, I don't know, a UX researcher, maybe it's not the right fit. Of course. But I'm calling here you're calling out your common sense. So, for instance, one example: you're a UX researcher and you only did qualitative research, and I don't know, you did one survey in the past, and the position is a mixed method researcher. Mixed method meaning both qualitative and quantitative. But you have done one survey in the past. It went well. Maybe you need more experience, but why not? Go with it. So that's the first aspect that I want to mention. And then all these requirements you will see in the next episode. I will go over what to do with it. But basically, the task here is to highlight, same as in the first bucket, but here you highlight everything that you possess. And you also highlight in another way everything that you don't, so that you have an idea of how well you rank. Also make use of LinkedIn features that tell you how you rank comparing to other applicants, for instance, and also how well you rank depending on your skills that are mentioned in your profile, for instance. This is also, it can come in handy at the time of determining if you have the right profile or not. But so that would be it, at least for a first step. And trust me, this makes half of the 20% that contribute to 80% of the return. Is just that. And you don't need fancy digital equipment and products. No. I basically take a blank sheet of paper and I divide it in two, and I write by hand requirements or minimum qualifications on one side, and the other side is like, what attracts me in this position and in this company. Basically that. So, and in what attracts you, it's not only, of course, as I was saying, not the position only, but also the company, the values, the culture, the ways of working, if you know it, and so on and so forth. Needless to say, of course, if you have a first interview, and in the first interview, some things have been shared that complement all of this that is in job offer, you need to, of course, edit your list. You need to add things and remove things according to your understanding of the situation, of course. But that would be the first step. Basically, don't beat yourself too much about the job application process. I know it's hard and I know it's stressful, but in the end, it's a numbers game, first of all. Then apply to the extent of your possibilities, apply only to the positions that you're interested in. Then work on your communication, of course. And then when you prepare for your interview, but technically you already did it at the time of applying, when you prepare for your interview, identify in two buckets. The first one being what interests you about the company, and the second one being to what extent do you have the skills to enter this position. So that would be it for the episode of today. Next episode, we will cover basically how to prepare, basically what to prepare on your side, even before considering any job offer or questions. And then I will go over all the typical questions that we are asked in an interview, and I will give my typical answer for each one of them. So I hope that you learned at least one thing in this episode. If so, I highly encourage you to subscribe and to hit the notification bell so that you are notified for the new episodes that come in. If you want to give some feedback, you are always welcome. If you want me to tackle some new topics that I haven't thought of, it would be also super helpful if you could mention it to me. And for the rest, I highly hope to have you in my next episode as a listener. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you everyone for joining me today on UXChange. I hope you found today's episode insightful and valuable. Make sure to subscribe in order for you not to miss the next episode. Share it if you liked it and leave a review. Thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future topics, feel free to reach out directly to me. You can find all the details in the show notes. And see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.